Well, I don't know what he's up to. He's picking me like chicken, shucking me like corn, stewing me like an oyster. I mean, he ain't putting nothing down.
Right as it stands right now, there's only two of us left alive. That's me and Sano Trafficani. And as far as I'm concerned, we're both going to stay alive because I ain't going to say shit. The only thing I'm saying is any of you assholes come near me, you better have a fucking army with you, baby, because I've got my shit together, and I'll blow the first one of you motherfuckers away that even comes near me. And that you can put in print.
Now, the disruptor-in-chief, Elon Musk, who apparently has adopted the alias, at least he changed his social media handle to Harry Balls, tweeted this morning, democracy in America is being destroyed by judicial.
Yo, it's your boy, the Tesla King, Elon Musk. The boys always make my rocket shoot straight up, no homo. You bout to listen to the #1 JFK-related podcast on planet Mars. Now plug in your neural link for two numbnuts who aren't a waste of government spending, the BBB&JOEB.
Here's our JOEB, and the BBB, baby, BBB&JOEB, rock, cock, and Joe rally. JOEB, and the BBB, baby, BBB&JOEB, rock, cock, and Joe rally. We're coming in, only seeking the truth about JFK. It's a long-coming podcast crew. Tell 'em, Joe, here we go.
And here we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the show. This is episode 334 of the Lone Gunman Podcast, Adventures in Podcasting. We have a very special guest for you this evening, but before we get in there, we would like to welcome in our new channel member, T Busy. That's right. Welcome, T Busy. I like that name. Yes, T Busy.
Thank you. Welcome,
If
sir.
you'd like to become a channel member, the link is in the description. We make it real easy for you. You get 4 extra shows a month on Wednesday nights, and they are good ones. So if we do say so ourselves, we do. So without further ado, we were on this gentleman's podcast a couple weeks ago, and now he is on ours. I think they call that a swap cast, don't they, Joe?
I think they do.
Yeah, we're kind of swapping spit with Matt. We're solving JFK. An excellent podcast that is just entering its 3rd season. Matt is also, if I can speak, a co-author of the book Chokeholds that came out last year and was featured on the documentary What the Doctors Saw, which is an excellent documentary, by the way. So without further ado, let's bring in Matt Crumpton, host of Solving JFK. Matt, welcome into the show, sir. How are you doing?
BBB&JOEB. Oh, shit. Uh-oh. Is that a sign? We'll just put it right here.
It's new. It's new. So
yeah, I picked that up at the thrift store today, so we'll get it adhered better. And anyway, yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm happy to be here, and it's a weird situation to be someone who, you know, plausibly is supposed to know things, but I know with absolute certainty that the audience knows so much more than me, and when I'm on this podcast in particular. So I would say it's a humbling experience to be here. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yes, and we do. We have an excellent cadre of regulars that love to hang out with us here on Friday nights. And let's welcome some of them into the chat. Tiny Dancer is here. Sally.
Solid.
Social Outcast, Big Claude's up in here, ain't you, Dean, Paul Cummings, Scott, Alpha 66, which means there's also a link to Alpha 66 YouTube channel in this description because he was nice enough to do some work for us last week and on our Wednesday show. So if you'd like to check out his videos and give him a follow, he would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure more will straggle in as they come.
T Busy said the picture fell down and to the left.
I think this might be his first comment, and it's an epic one.
Yes. Bravo. The newest member of the Lone Gunman family. Bravo.
Yeah. A little different than your podcast when things happen live, and you just got to kind of roll with it, as we've learned, and I've learned.
I love that there's so many different ones. I think it's cool. I think it's great. It's wonderful. Anytime I had a situation where someone in life could be a potential competitor, or I could be cool and see if we could collabing has always been the way. Except for the kid that beat me out for starting quarterback, but it's okay. He got injured.
Yeah, I mean, we noticed a nice little bump.
You're the man.
After we appeared on your show. In fact, we're 4 subscriptions away from reaching 2,000. Holy shit! So hopefully that happens within the next couple of days.
Cool.
So yeah, thanks for the bump from being on your show, and hopefully you get a little bump from being on this show.
There's a joke to be made there, but yes, thank you. I'll enjoy the bump.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think your audience liked our episode when we came on with you about the Martins. I thought,
oh yeah, for sure,
it was a lot of new information for a significant part of your audience, and we're happy that got such good reception.
Yeah, it was great. It was very good. Yeah, it keeps, the case keeps going. It's like, oh, Marina had a business manager, blah blah blah. Then you're like, well, hang on. Then you can kind of pick the story up where it had been left off, and that's kind of what's nice about trying to cover it the way I'm trying to cover. I mean, the thing is, you can never cover everything, so like just knowing that I'm not going to get everything is one of the key premises of the show. So whenever someone calls me a dummy, I have to agree with them rather quickly.
Well, I'm going into 11 years and I still haven't covered everything. So how many years have you been doing your show?
3. I started in the fall of 2022.
Gotcha. And now, were you a podcast listener before you? Like, what made you want to actually do a podcast?
I mean, I had always followed the case. I mean, it probably started for me with The Men Who Killed Kennedy around early 2000s when I was in college. And then I read
hopefully not part 9.
Yeah, right. I read all the not all, but I read like a lot of the big conspiracy books. I watched the Mark Lane documentary. I read Posner. And to me it was like it was too much of a mystery, and I just didn't think it was solvable. And then I went to law school and kind of got, I was a litigator for a while, and I got used to having to cite every single proposition of fact that I'm putting forth. And doing that made me think, like, wait a minute, it would be nice to compare what each side says, because what happened is I thought I had, when you start, I'm sure, obviously you guys, your show's great at this. You start to notice extra threads. You're like, wait, I know this name, and I know this name, but I know them for other reasons. And you're telling me there's this other thing that's related to them too. Damn, I didn't like. So, but yeah. Where was I going with that? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Friday night. Anyway, so we come back to things. We try to cover things. I don't know. My bad. I'm reading the comments on the side.
All good. Yeah, it can be distracting, especially. It's like we can even overlay them here on the side, and it's like that's a little too much. But we love Restream. I mean, it's kind of cool.
But yeah, it was great having you guys on. And you were asking me how I got into podcasting and how I got into it. So basically, I thought there was a conspiracy, and I thought we can all agree. Look, Alan Dulles, all these things. I mean, some of the things that I still probably think is the case today. But I was like certain about it. I was like, there's absolute clarity. In every single thing that's in the movie or that's in The Men Who Killed Kennedy, I believed all of it. I thought that was all like concrete fact. And so anyway, I went to Facebook to try to like marshal the troops. Like, let's what are we going to do? How are we going to get like truth and reconciliation? And the answer was, I came across people who believe, first of all, it's their hobby to believe that it was Oswald alone. That was like, oh, so like, this is your like niche, right on. And then also they they a lot of times had arguments that I'd never heard before. And I was like, whoa. So and actually sometimes they were like right about some things, right? Not everything, but the point is there are counterpoints to everything. And so what I wanted to do is have a platform where you give both arguments on each individual issue at the same time. Like for season 1, I was real good at sticking to it. I even have like a scorecard where it's like on this issue, they argue this and they argue this. Here's the open questions, whatever. So yeah, I just wanted to compare what everybody was arguing, and then eventually try to figure out what happened, right? But then give everyone a reference of look, here are all the arguments. And one thing that's hard about that, so I'm trying to be objective, right? But the challenge is once you know something, you can't unknow it, right? So I can't, once I've made, and unlike like for example Jeff Crudell's show, and Jeff's a friend of mine, Jeff's great. But on his show, I think he leaves it intentionally open to the listener. Like he's not trying to really push one way or the other. On my show, I'm kind of like, look, here's what I think, but I try to not commit if I don't know for sure. But I determined that there had to be a shot from the front, and that Oswald was not likely on the 6th floor. And those two things, once you make that determination, you go, that's put to bed. Now you're on other topics, right? So anyway, it's tough. It's like I'm the most objective guy there is. That's why I wrote a book called Chokeholds that inescapably prove conspiracy.
Yeah. After you do that, the gig's up, Matt.
The gig is up, indeed. Yes.
Yeah, but that's okay. Because you got to stay honest to yourself, or else you come off as disingenuous. And as long as you have a good heart, a good mind, you're a genuine person, it comes across. And not all podcasts are like that, believe me, or internet radio shows, whatever you want to call them. People can hear you're passionate about the subject and know you're not mailing it in. So season 1 was roughly like laying the groundwork, basically looking at.
Season 1 was like the core disputed facts in Dallas,
right?
And Bethesda with the medical evidence, but it's not asking who did it. The season 1 was just, did the Warren report get it right that it was Oswald alone? That was the core question for season 1. We also went deep on Tippett, which is related.
Yeah, 2 giant rabbit holes is the medical evidence and the Tippett shooting.
Oh man, yeah.
Everything's a rabbit hole.
The medical evidence alone, I hate, because there's just so much he say, she say, documents say, doctors say. It's hard to ever have everyone agree on exactly what happened with the medical side. The Parkland and the Bethesda side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And despite even having, eyewitness testimony. I mean, I interviewed Dennis David like 10 years ago, and he was supposedly at Bethesda. Well, not supposedly, he was at Bethesda. He supposedly saw some things going on, 2 caskets and all this other stuff. And, you meet somebody in real life and you hear these stories and it's like, holy crap, like, did this really happen? And then, my eyes start to glaze over when, we're talking the medical evidence and this, that, and the other thing. And Mexico City's another one. There's just so many deep, obvious potholes that you can step in. And even if you spend a couple years looking into this stuff, you can come out of it and still not know nothing,
Yes, definitely. It's a lot. And I mean, the Tippett case was a tough one because there are so many witnesses who identified Oswald,
and contradict each other.
Yeah, and contradict each other, and he's wearing like 6 different color jackets. That's a tough. But that was the one that got me on the like. I don't know, John Armstrong. Let me go ahead and watch you. You give your presentation for the 11th time, because nobody else has given me like a plausible argument of how it couldn't be Oswald if it wasn't someone who kind of looked like him. Except for you got the chubby guy running. You got obviously what what's the lady that Mark Lane talked to, and then she disappeared.
Aquila Clemens.
Yeah, Aquila Clemens. You got her talking about the people running down the street. But anyway, whatever. The Tippett case is a mess, and but Carl Mather is the other thing on the Tippett case that I'm just like, I don't know. That's not normal. There's something happening with Carl Mather. Like, I can't tell you what it is, but like it's like if you try a dish, you're like, this is horrible, but I couldn't tell you that nutmeg was the culprit, but it's something that shouldn't be in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's supposedly coming from a credible source, a guy who later went on to be mayor of Dallas. It's like, well, you want to believe these people, but it's like, damn, how can this be true? How can you see this? How can, what and what does it mean? That's the other thing. You can, okay, well, if this is true, what does it mean? Where does it go from here? When you, like, even with the Carl Mather thing, okay, you say, oh, you work with Collins Radio, is one of Tippett's neighbors. So, but what's an Oswald look like doing sitting in his car?
Yeah, I don't know.
What's it mean? I don't know. But there's so many of these Oswald sightings, and I will admit, I've read John Armstrong's book. I've done the deep dive of Harvey and Lee, and it's a fascinating theory. And it's even more fascinating to go back and dig through the Baylor archives and see his early correspondence with people like Jim Mars and Jack White, where you see the theory get born, as they're trying to discuss these things back and forth and trying to make sense of all these anomalies that you're finding. And, I'll give it to him, man. He went down a lot of rabbit holes and interviewed a lot of crazy people that had never been, interviewed before ever. And is it odd? Hell yeah. I mean, it's so odd. How can this guy be in two places at once, two schools at once, two places in the Marines at once? It's just like, how do you explain that?
Not to mention the fall of 1963 when it starts to really ramp up more. I mean, I definitely don't. I think I talk about in season 2 how there were at least 27 Oswald sightings where we know that he was somewhere else. But I don't necessarily believe that all of those are an Oswald impression. I mean, something could be someone. There could be some simple coincidences and mistakes in there, like all day long, but not 27. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's just a numbers game, and that's where, like, when I talked to Fred Litwin, when we debated on Sean Atwood, that's the thing I keep coming back to. It's like, man, how many things there need to be? I don't know. And that's where people have different, coincidence thresholds. That's my word I'm going with.
Yeah. I mean, I realized most of the Oswald Ruby sightings together was probably Larry Crayford. I mean, the dude was a young guy, kind of looked like Oswald. Could have
Oswald and Ruby said, there was like 12 of them, and I think those are. I pulled those out, so the 27 plus those 12.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean, but something like that doesn't account for like the downtown Lincoln Mercury thing, or something weird like that, or the where he's buying Pico Brittle at the Jiffy Mart that morning. Supposed to be at work. Like, you can't. Unless this guy is carrying around blatantly Lee Harvey Oswald identification, which he may have been, I don't know. You got to really stretch the conspiracy net to, all right, Ruby's involved. He's making this guy pretend to be Lee Harvey Oswald and do these things. Why is Crayford doing it? Why would Ruby be making this guy do it if he's doing it? There's just all kinds of mysterious things there with this Crayford guy, I think.
I feel like on the Ruby ones, because somebody, I don't know if it was you or someone else, but someone told me that, and I went back and looked at it again. And I feel like for most of the ones where it's Oswald and Ruby together, there are a couple where it's like he's doing the whole thing where he's listing his characteristics of what makes him Oswald. But for a lot of them, the whole thing is just he was there with Ruby, and someone said that he kind of looked like Oswald. Right. So for those, I'm willing to throw. That's nothing. That's a nothing burger, right? Let me ask you about this. What do you think about Robert McCune or McCown? I've heard it pronounced. I think it's McCune is what the HSCA said on the tape. Do you think that I mean, what do you think the deal is with that story?
That to me smells like a setup all day long.
Uh-huh.
When you have somebody identifying themselves or looking like Lee Harvey Oswald, going to Castro's personal gun runner,
Right?
you know what I mean, and offering to or trying to buy rifles for an exorbitant amount of money.
Uh-huh. Right. 4 rifles for like $10,000.
Yeah, I mean that to me screams setup. Because how would Lee Harvey Oswald get to where McCown was? It wasn't like he was like across the town. It was
Houston, right?
Yes, Galveston.
Galveston. Okay.
Yeah, Allison's there, according to George Strait.
Yes. I mean, that's you can't. I mean, it's, and then supposedly Jack Ruby had some ties to McCown too. Allegedly went and visited him, or asked for a letter from Castro or something. Told him he was going to pay him like $12,000 for something.
Right.
But that to me, I don't know. The only way I can quantify it is that smells like a setup to me.
Right.
Right. And to set up what? To set up Castro in Cuba specifically.
Right. That one probably makes more sense than, for example, like why you would do that. It's obvious, and it's also a little bit less risky at the exact time, because that was in like September, I think. That was before Oswald had this job, so it was like the risk of saying that there's 2 Oswalds. I mean, I suppose I don't remember the deal. Oswald's supposed to be somewhere else, but he wasn't at the school book depository, so that one's a little bit looser. What about Ralph Yates? I recently did a revisit show on that.
Cocoa Puffs, or is he genuine? Now, if you take him at his word, it can't be Oswald, right?
Right.
Could it have been somebody identifying themselves as Oswald? Sure. But again, I mean, was the guy cuckoo? I mean, they did lock him up. I think he ended up dying in the loony bin, didn't he?
Yeah. He had 40 shock treatments, and he never changed his story. So okay, well, here's the whole article has been written about how I'm a crank for pushing the Ralph Yates story. Unfortunately for me, my Ralph Yates story is like how I start the podcast. It's like my first thing.
Well, that was one of the big questions for the Warren Commission. They had I think it was 6 or 7 major things that they were looking into, and that was one of them.
Mm-hmm. So here's what it comes down to on Yates, and just super quick for the benefit of people who may not know what I'm talking about here, which probably is very few people in this audience, but Ralph Yates was a refrigerator repairman who says he picked up a hitchhiker on either the Wednesday or Thursday, he wasn't sure, before the assassination, and that he picked this guy up at the intersection of basically I-35 and Beckley, which is about a mile south of Oswald's rooming house. It doesn't matter because Oswald's at work. We know that, so that's just a sidebar. But anyway, Yates says he picks this guy up and he wants a ride downtown, specifically to the intersection of Houston and Main, basically right, Dealey Plaza. Or it might have been Houston and Elm, like even closer there to the corner. And he had a large package that he said had curtain rods in it. And he talked about whether you could shoot the president from a tall building. And he asked if the guy had heard of Jack Ruby. Okay. So, enough to be weird foreknowledge if it's true. But here's the thing. The biggest arguments against me, this is why Matt Crumpton's a fraud, is that no one corroborated Yates's actual location where he was supposed to be that day. So he was supposed to be in Arlington and Irving, according to his boss, but he says he was in Oak Cliff picking up a check from this other company. And then they interviewed the employees from the other company. There's no check. There's no check from that company to Yates's company. And both employees say, no, this guy didn't come in on either Wednesday or Thursday. So it's, there's no proof there. So there's no proof for Yates. He does say crazy stuff. There's this report where he's like, I was born an America boy, and then God decided he was going to kill the president, and I would pick up the hitchhiker who was the killer right before it. And then God would, it was crazy. You should read it. It's nuts. So, okay, doesn't look good. Looks like Yates is just making this thing up. But here's the thing, and this is why I'm not recanting anything. I'm just, but I do think I didn't mention this counterpoint, and it's worth it. And it takes me from 75% on the Yates story to 50.001% on the Yates story. Okay. And it's this. So the point out for Yates is that he didn't fail any polygraphs, first of all. They said some of them, they were inconclusive. Okay. But the main point is Yates told Dempsey Jones, his coworker, that he had, about the hitchhiker. And then Dempsey Jones confirmed that to the FBI. Now the counterpoint.
Before the assassination.
Before the assassination, told him about the hitchhiker. Yes. Now, the thing is, and I didn't mention this either, so I cleaned all this up. It's in this mailbag episode I did. But basically, the counterpoint to that then is that sorry, I'm so deep down this Ralph Yates rabbit hole. Let's see. Yates went to the FBI and he tried to recant his whole story. And he says, actually, what happened is Dempsey Jones and I were talking about shooting, whether or not you could shoot someone from a tall building. And the hitchhiker that I picked up talked about shooting someone from a tall building too. And that's what I told Dempsey Jones. It's like, well, hang on. You're still saying that you told Dempsey Jones that a hitchhiker would, or that the hitchhiker talked about shooting from a tall building and that you picked up a hitchhiker. Like, so he didn't recant his story that much. Okay. And Dempsey Jones, like, you would have to say that Dempsey Jones is lying. Now, the main argument people make on the other side is, well, you just, obviously, Yates was confusing the conversation he had with Dempsey Jones with this conversation with the hitchhiker. Okay, but it's still the hitchhiker, and Dempsey Jones still said it. But Yates is definitely crazy, and there's not any documentary support for him. So have a good time figuring out what happened. I'm sticking with Yates 50.001.
Here you go.
Yeah, and I kind of land on that too, like 50-50, and like I do on many of these contradicting events or
just commit already. Get off the damn fence.
I know. Well, I respect it. It's so hard for people like us to make definitive statements. I mean, what I get all the time when I talk to people that say, well, who killed JFK? And I go, it's like, it's a simple question. It's not a simple answer.
Enigma wrapped in a riddle, man.
Yeah, I know who didn't, but
it wasn't Oswald.
Yeah, that's the easy answer.
Mm-hmm.
The hard answer is who did. Then that gets a little more difficult.
What do you guys
do? Suspects down,
Sorry, I spoke over you. What'd you say?
I said you just have to narrow your suspects down.
Sure.
You have to do your due diligence and either rule them in or rule them out. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
And your list gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yes. We can get off the stockade fence. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, and that's what your season 3 of Solving JFK is kind of exploring, right? You're believe 2 episodes in right now. The first 2 are of the Secret Service. I think there's going to be a third. And,
there's going to be 6.
6 Secret Service ones?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh wow. Okay.
I know. Because I just couldn't cover everything. There's too much crap. And then there's going to be a recap and rebuttal with Vince Palomaro that I'm actually recording tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually going to ask before I get into, because you're going to explore a bunch of different factions.
I'm looking at everybody. Anyone's ever said killed JFK. We're gonna cover. James Files, get in here. Let's go. We'll talk about everybody. Yeah. I'm not afraid to talk. Like, I just think that, you should talk about everything. I'm gonna talk about Israel. I'm not like you should talk about everything.
Oh, well, I got a great guest suggestion for you.
Go ahead.
You should have Corey Hughes on your show.
Oh man, I don't want to start fight. I want to be nice to everybody.
Hey, that guy is an
know.
asshole and deserves everything he's got coming to him. He has talked so much trash about JFK researchers, which includes you and me and Joe and everybody in the chat. Yeah, I couldn't believe he was on that panel the other night. But anyway, that's a whole different story.
Yeah, I mean, the Israel thing is having a moment, so I'm really looking forward to studying it. And I think that you can argue motive all day long. I just don't see how. The question is like, what is the argument precisely that their exact role was? And I know there is one, and I know a lot of people feel strongly about it. And present the arguments and the counterpoints.
Yeah, I mean, Israel's even still today, it's a hot topic.
He trashed me by name because that could change my view. I'll have to go listen.
Well, yeah,
I try to be nice until a swing is thrown, and then there's a short range when it's self-defense, and after that,
I'm surprised he hasn't reached out to you and asked to come on your show and explain his theory yet.
Okay. Look, and again, dude, I'll be cool with anybody. I just want, I do want. I'm not trying to battle people other than on points. I'm not trying to go personally at anybody, but he I think said I was wrong about something, and I was like, cool. What's the count? What am I wrong about specifically? And where are you getting that? And he sent me like a link to a 6-hour video, and then he got mad at me because I told him I don't have 6 hours. Like, hey, can you just tell me like in a couple of tweets? And it's whatever, man. I understand. So we'll get it dialed in. It's all good. Yeah. Peace, love, and respect, everybody.
Yeah. I mean, there may be something there regarding the whole Demona thing and the nuclear test ban treaty.
Yeah.
Angleton, but again, you hear these things about the Mossad being behind everything and this and that, but there's no. The unfortunate thing is it's really hard to prove that.
Well, I for one live in Columbus, Ohio, in Les Wexner's backyard, and I can tell you, I don't even think there is a Mossad. We're good.
Yeah. And that is a reference for people that are familiar with current events. I'm not going to get into that, but he has quite an estate there in Ohio, huh?
Yeah. It's I'll tell you some stories later. I have some interesting tales.
Okay.
Just kidding. I don't have any people who are AI algorithm owned by Wexner that's monitoring this. That was a joke. Sorry.
Yeah. And I'm kind of like on a JFK Records note. I'm kind of frustrated that the Epstein files are kind of taking over the conversation on the JFK assassination files, because I think what you said in, I think it was the other bonus episode with Andrew Eiler.
Yeah.
This task force is way too broad.
Yes.
And it seems like it's just being done for political purposes. And I kind of lose faith every day we go by here. I just don't know what to make of it, man. But it seems like there's a lot of focus on that instead of the JFKA files, which Anna Paulina Luna said was going to be the first order of business. So,
yeah. Well, and the other thing on the Epstein files is they've already been released. Like it's already
right. It's already there. If you want to know, like who's on the flight logs and about Wexner, right? It's all there.
What they haven't released are documents held by the court related to the prosecution against him. There are some documents and some investigatory reports that they have. But that's why everybody talks about the client list. That's out. There's like a website you can go to, and it's RFK's on it. Like
and he admitted it. He
did admit it. And I'm not trying to. It's all good.
No.
But
a lot of powerful people were caught up.
Trump's on the flight list, but
I don't think Trump ever met Epstein. All right.
Despite them being photographed together.
Just kidding. That was a JK. We're good. Everything's fine.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, your season 3, in addition to the Secret Service, which I didn't know was going to be 6 episodes, you're going to also be exploring LBJ, J. Edgar Hoover, which could kind of be connected, Texas oil men, the Soviet Union, Cuba, Israel, of course, we just talked about, Cuban exiles, mafia, CIA, and the military generals. So
yeah. So it's going to be along my poor producer friend Jerry, my engineer. It's going to be a long season. But hey, real quick, back to the records.
Sure.
You know, I don't know what's going to happen with the Congressional committee. Anything's better than nothing. What I think would be great is if we could, and we're Andrew's in touch with the committee, okay, and like when I say in touch, I don't mean like sadly emailing desperately. Like they respond, it's fine. But what needs to happen is we need to take this list of final determination forms that Andrew's found for documents that already have been ordered to be declassified, cross-reference them about, so you take here's all the forms we have ordering these documents out. Here are the ones that are released. Here are the ones that are not released. You just cross-reference RIF numbers and you file a writ of mandamus. We can file a lawsuit, or Congress can do it. Congress can push for it, and Congress can also declassify. I think there are some congressional records that are held by the National Archives. And then another side point. So one avenue is the Congress avenue. One lane is the Trump lane. And we'll see what happens there. And then the other thing that we have going on is this 2,400 FBI files, FBI documents that were found. And what that really should underline for everybody, the fact that they found 2,400 new FBI files that the National Archives did not have, is that this whole conversation about the JFK records is only related to the records that were actually turned over to the ARRB. So we got 2,400. What do you think the FBI ones are about? My fear is that these documents are going to say Oswald was a Soviet. Oh, he was. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be more of the Soviet Cuba type stuff. We'll see what happens. I mean, I like that there's action and there's things going on. I want to withhold judgment before I talk trash about any of the politicians who are in a position to do something. Chip chop, baby. Let's go.
I think, we got the same model as you. Something is better than nothing, which is what we got before.
Right.
Yeah. And just give them a little time. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of things going on that Trump's trying to do. And just give them a little time. Task Force Hottie 1, a.k.a. Anna Pauline.
He's a big lunatic, Rob.
I'm a fan, Matt.
Yeah. God. Well, yeah, it's
give a little time.
Yes, I'm for it. I think they'll, I'm open-minded and I hope it goes well. How about that?
Yeah, and to your point, I was to that panel we were just talking about a couple minutes ago with Larry, Jeff, and Court Hughes. Jefferson Morley stated on it about an hour in, I think, that the FBI has all these records digitized already and sent to the archives.
What was this panel you're talking about? I think I need to look this up.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe. Rob, I don't know how to explain it exactly. It
was a show on the Forbidden Knowledge Network, which is Corey Hughes' home podcast network, right? But it wasn't his show. It was another show.
Week, right?
It was the guy that hosts Macroaggressions. Is Charlie? I don't know what his last name is. I don't know if you've ever heard that show or not. But he's responsible. They're behind the JFKX documentary, that piece of crap, where they said that, they were using squibs in the limo and JFK really lived and all this other nonsense and horse shit. And so this is the show they were on, but here's the panel. You're going to love this. So you got Corey Hughes, Charlie, whatever the hell his name is, Larry Hancock, Jefferson Morley, Chuck O'Celli, Don Jeffries, and some other guy I've never heard of before.
Okay. Well,
it was interesting.
Yeah, this is different. I mean, Jefferson Morley and Larry Hancock on one side, and I mean
Jeffries and Hughes on the other.
yeah. So that would be interesting. I mean, I'm friends with Larry and Jeff, and so I think they do good work. And I don't have a ton of disagreements with them, but I know you guys have been. I know there's all these pre-existing beefs and things that have happened that I'm not hip to. So I'm the guy that just comes into prison and I'm like, I'm going to be nice and friends with all the groups.
Yeah, stick around long enough, buddy. Stick around.
And me too, Matt. It's funny because I came into this community like 2 years ago, right? And Rob's obviously been in this for a decade, a little more, but podcasting, and he has all these thoughts of all these other people, and I'm kind of like you. I'm just like, I don't know, whatever. Like, people are people. They're gonna have their thoughts. So it's very interesting that we have that dynamic, because I'm always kind of navigating. Well, who does Rob like? Does he not like him? Rob? Has he had previous beef with him in the past? And like, I'm coming in this like very fresh, and it's pretty funny. But Morley said that in that panel that the FBI had these documents digitized and sent to the archives, and that it was now in the archives' hands. We know how the archivist was fired, and number 2 and 3. So interesting to see how that's going to kind of come out, because in theory, if they're digitized already, and we know the archives have had their issues with not being fully funded and being able to digitize everything, I think a single digit percentage of the JFK records are actually digitized. And so what would it take to get that released? You would think with, people have said Kash Patel is going to be someone for transparency. So like, what's going to happen with that? Everything is so wide open right now. So to Rob's point, we have to sit and wait. And we've talked about this a lot. Like, what's the alternative? There is no alternative. Well, so we're going to take what we get.
Yes. Look, and it's great. Look, man, I'm happier with something happening than nothing happening, just like we said. But to answer your question on what we can do, these 2,400 FBI documents, they're going to the National Archives, so they weren't turned over. They should have been turned over. So now they have to be treated as if they were turned over at that time. And that means each one needs to have a TPS report and a cover sheet, okay, with identifying the reason why, either declassify each document, or they have to identify why it's a continuing threat and articulate that, and then say what it's related to approximately. And the thing is, they're not even following that for the documents now, identification aids. So it's a real problem, and they could force it, and we can force it with a lawsuit. The answer is litigation, and I know they had one before. I'll defer to Andrew
in Louisiana or Alabama or something. He already filed a lawsuit like the day after Trump did the executive order.
Judicial Watch, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yes. So he could get it too. He could get it with this, because I think he did do a mandamus action. Yeah. And that's the key, because you have to go, hey, there's a statute that points to what this government official is supposed to do. Hey, they're not doing it. Look, here's evidence they're not doing it. Do it. And if they don't do it, they can be held in contempt of court and go to jail.
Yep.
And not pass go.
Not collect $200 either.
That's right. Hey, quick question, if I could just throw it out there to you, because this is one kind of like the Ralph Yates thing. So in covering the Secret Service, I've just come back to the Abraham Bolden Chicago plot, and so I'm really, when I study it enough to do a show on it, and I'm doing a citation for every single sentence, not every sentence, but every proposition of fact, that's when I get down into it. I'm like, cool. So where's the document? Cool. Where's the FBI? Where's the report? And then it just never shows up. And now Bolden was certainly framed, though. He was framed with this guy named Spagnoli. and he Spagnoli admitted that he made the whole thing up, and the prosecutor told him to make it up. So in that way, Bolden is, sort of proven to be credible. And then he's also on the record talking to Rowley when he goes to Washington in November before the assassination. And we don't know what he talked about necessarily, but it was after that it was right after Bolden, literally the day after Bolden called J. Lee Rankin from a White House phone. He was at the White House for a Secret Service training, and he wanted to tell the Warren Commission about what happened on November 2nd, the Chicago plot. And the next day, he was called home to Chicago and arrested for attempting to sell a government report to a defendant. So anyway, this is the whole Thomas Valley case, and then we do have evidence of Thomas Valley. So the whole point is there's supposed to be 4 assassins. I think 3 of them Cubans, yeah. And this lady has a this lady calls the cops and says that they have rifles, and then this one Secret Service agent is staking them out, and he arrests 2 of them, and Bolden sees them at the station, and Special Agent in Charge Martineau, who's the main guy in charge in Chicago, does a side number and a side file and has everybody turn it in, and there's only a few people working on it, and Bolden wasn't even working on it himself. He just overheard it. So I do think Bolden, I feel like he's telling the truth because of his whole the texture of the whole story. But man, not having any documents and not having any other witnesses
makes it tough.
I just think as critical researchers, as people who are going, we don't think that the Warren report got it right. We don't think what the corporate press tells us is correct. It's probably good to give the disclaimer, hey, there's no reports here. But
he does have corroboration.
What's that?
He does have corroboration.
What is it?
From Judy Baker.
Okay. Does she tell me about that?
Well, she says that she knows that Lee called the FBI and warned them about the plot.
Because the informant's name was Lee.
Yes, allegedly.
Allegedly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
here's the way I see Bolden. Okay,
please, yeah.
You have to remember the time, man. The civil rights thing hadn't really been pushed through yet, and there was probably a lot of racism rampant in the FBI, especially white guys who saw a black guy, taking a white guy's job. So the whole part of setting him up to get him out of there doesn't surprise me, and it doesn't necessarily have to be conspiracy or assassination related. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And to his credit or detriment, I don't know which, he may have at the time, you have all the shit going on, so maybe use that to his advantage to either get out of it or get reinstated or whatever the case may be. Who knows? But again, like I said, the problem with Bolden's story is that we don't have that document. There's nothing to back up what he says. And by all means, I mean, he seems like a nice guy. He's been a Facebook friend for 15 years probably. And, religious guy. I got no reason to think he lied about anything, but, without that other stuff to support him, like you said, man, it's a toss up. I wouldn't put money on it. You know what I'm saying?
50.01%.
49.99.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, and I know my guy, Paul Blow is gonna not like that. I'm not certain about this, but I just, it was really surprising to me that there were no documents and no witnesses. That's all I'm saying. So, and I'm still, again, I'm going to go 51% with Bolden. So
yeah. Now the other part of it with Valley, being this, lone nut, former Marine, whatever, rifles, tall building, he worked along the motorcade route type of thing. It's just, that is suspect as hell. Take Bolden out of it. You know what I mean?
Well, and then what Douglas pointed out, which is that the cops were trailing Valley for 24 hours, and they actually arrest him 5 minutes after Pierre Salinger, the press secretary, makes the public statement that the president is not coming to Chicago. So his theory is, well, they found out right before, and they arrested him because they didn't need to have him free to kill the president, or so they could frame for killing the president if the president doesn't show up, right? So, but yeah, I don't know. In the context of the Secret Service, I just felt like I needed to throw, when you cover the Secret Service, you got to kind of throw that one in there.
Oh, there's a couple things you got to throw in there. Whether it be the Hickey story,
I got it.
The Abraham Bolden story, they were out drinking, did the driver shoot him? Yeah. All of that. You have to take it all into consideration. And there's a lot there to chew on, whether they were lax in what they were doing. Was it their fault he got shot? Even though they may not have shot him themselves, can you blame them?
Right. Well, I mean, dude, to me, and I know I'm looking forward to talking to Paul Amara about this, but because I know he has for him, it's Emery Roberts is a suspect, is someone he views suspicious because he pulled Lawton and Ribka off of the car at Love Field as they were leaving, and he gave the order to all the agents in the follow-up car to stand down and to freeze. Clint Hill had already taken off, but John Reddy was not ready, turned out. Hey,
but like his point, there's only so much room on this goddamn car. You can't have 10 monkeys hanging off the sides of these cars. You know what I mean? Like, the follow-up car was pretty packed as it was already.
Packed out. Yeah. And
you can't have two dudes riding on the back of the presidential limo the whole way.
Well, you have they usually would walk alongside, and then they would stand up there when it was, you know what I mean? But here's the thing. They were only on for 50% of the motorcades, and they were not on for any of the other 3 motorcades on the Texas trip. So that alone will not get you there. But here's the two bonkers ones. And back to Lawson. These are 2 more Lawson did. Motorcycle cops. They're supposed to be motorcycle cops either at every corner of the limo, so 4, or you could have 2 if they're alongside, and then you have 2 in the front and 2 in behind. That was the protocol. They only had 4. Now, they had more motorcycles in the motorcade at large. I'm saying right next to the president. There were only the 4 behind, and they were behind. They were not alongside. Lawson told the Dallas motorcycle, the head of motorcycle officers, I want to say it was Captain Purdue Lawrence, might have been Stevenson, but it was one of those 2. He told them, your officers are not to ride alongside the vehicle. Then he writes in his November 30th report, Lawson, the same guy who tells the cops don't ride alongside the limo, he writes, the cops rode alongside the limo. Like, what the? And then the other thing is rooftops. Lawson is supposed to, it's his job to advance rooftops and to have cops, interview. There were 2 books written by Secret Service higher ups, one by Bauman, who was the head of the Secret Service, one by chief inspector, I forget his name, but like in 1962 and 63, these books were written, and they lay out the protocol, which is like really, doesn't, it seems like maybe not the best like operational security, but whatever. They lay it out, and for buildings, they're supposed to be any multi-story building is supposed to have either a local law enforcement, military presence, or Secret Service, and they didn't do that at all in Dallas. And Lawson just said he said that he usually did that, but he didn't remember doing it. And I forgot. I can't say for sure that I talked about rooftops. And then they asked the cops, And they're like, they have notes of everything. They're like, no, we didn't say anything to us about rooftops. What? So I just, and here's a fun one. You want to get weird? Let's get weird.
Let's get weird.
Lawson, I'm getting speculative. Okay, here.
Okay.
And I'm just saying, let's shine a light over here. I'm not even saying it's anything yet. But Lawson was Army intelligence. Okay. Also Army intelligence is George Lumpkin, the chief deputy police chief, and he was the one that sealed off the school book depository building. And who's with Lumpkin while the school book depository building is sealed off? Whitmire. I forget the guy's first name, but this Lieutenant Colonel Whitmire, who's an Army intelligence colonel. And Lumpkin's also Army intelligence. Lumpkin invited his superior in Army intelligence to ride in the pilot car. Just out of the local deputy police chief invited his buddy, who, yes, he's a lieutenant colonel in the military. But so, and then we have James Powell too, Army intelligence. So I'm not saying it's something or it's nothing. I'm just saying Lawson is a person's interest, and what could his angle possibly be?
Yeah, but you got a big season 3 ahead of you, man.
Yeah, that you do for sure. And,
okay, but guys, here's the thing. I'm not gonna be able to conclusively go, it's this guy, whatever, but I will be able to go, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. It could be this, 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 or this. Like that's what I think I'll be able to do.
Yeah, and like the whole Greer thing is you see it rearing its ugly head again in the Facebook forums and things like that. All these things are cyclical, Matt. They come and they go, and they come and they go, and they get debunked, and then somebody new comes along and they rediscover something that's already been debunked. But to them, it's new, and it gets thrown out there again and again and again.
It's the Netflix octopus murders. That's why that came back.
Yeah.
If I had a nickel for every text I got from a friend that sent me the video of did the driver do it, I'd be a millionaire.
Well, I just covered that, and it's not out yet, but I just got done recording it, and I dove in, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna clear my mind. Let me walk into this case with a fresh mind. Pretend I have no thoughts about it. Let's just stare at Greer in slow motion 20 times and watch this Zapruder film over and over again. And doing that, I was able to successfully get to a magic eye. The things you used to stare at with cross-eyed, so they would pop out at you. That was my trick to how I would be able to see the magic eye thing. But it was like that. You can see when it's going really slow. If you're just really focused on Greer, it looks like he looks back at Kennedy the first time, and the second time he looks back and he goes, boom, left hand, pow, pow. And he brings his left hand back, and it's right seconds before the headshot. Okay, it was seconds before 3:13, moments before, milliseconds before. So that's the whole argument. There's not and this witness said this, and this witness said this, and this witness said this, and yada yada. That's the whole argument. Okay, at least the George Hickey argument has 3 different points that it tries to make.
Right.
So you look at it, and the answer for Bill Greer, spoiler alert for people who don't know this, it's that's Roy Kellerman's head. So it's the gun in his left
shine
hand
off his Brill cream
is the shine off his Brill cream, and you could tell because remember Greer either I don't think he stopped, but he definitely hit the brakes hard. Okay, and their bodies are moving forward in tandem. And it's that motion of the head moving forward that at the same time that Greer's coming back, it looks like he's pulling a gun back, but it's just Kellerman's head. So that's what's happening there. And George Hickey, he's in that which became famous from a book by a guy named Boner. Just cold hard facts. Boner Menninger, and that's his name. And then there's
a horrible disease. I got boner meningitis.
That's pretty good, man. So anyway, that was on Netflix for a while. They're all on Amazon, so that's cool. It's there to go watch. But it became popularized in a documentary, and basically the argument is, first of all, here's how he got started. It's Howard Donahue, the ballistics expert. So he's one of the guys in the CBS test that actually fires the shot. Like tries to replicate it, the Oswald shots. And then that guy, since it was hard to do, he was like, "No, Oswald couldn't have done that because I can barely do it, and I'm dope." he's a really good shooter. So anyway, he around the same time that he got interested in this, the Clark panel got together, and they moved the entrance wound up about 4.5 inches, where they said the rear entrance wound hit. So then he goes, "Oh, that's the entrance wound. That changes everything." And he tried to like draw a trajectory of where the bullet would be coming, given the new Clark panel revised entrance wound. And he thought, well, it had to be coming from lower than, from like under him. And he drew a line and it went straight to George Hickey. And guess what? There's a picture of George Hickey holding an AR-15. Okay. That's 2 facts. Better than Greer so far. We have 2 facts. And then the third fact to support it is 10 people smelled a gun smoke near the street. But that could have been the grassy knoll too, right? That could have been, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. So the main point is nobody saw Hickey fire a shot. So
Yeah.
And the whole argument rests on the idea that the Warren report is exactly correct across the board, all good, but the headshot was an accident, and they have a massive government cover-up, and they're still withholding documents today because of an accident from a Secret Service agent.
Yeah, and it's funny. We had a comment from Ted Lumley. He says, "Have you guys debunked the idea?" This is before you said this, Matt, that a Secret Service agent accidentally fired the fatal headshot from the car behind when it lunged forward while he was holding his AR-15. Just curious.
Yeah, I think there are some, like the driver did it and George Hickey did it, are great arguments if you just want to drive by the case and you don't know anything about anything, and that's if you don't know anything at all about the case, that's the first argument you hear, and you're really busy, you're not that interested in the case, then I could see you falling for this.
Yeah, and you want to ignore firsthand witnesses and deal.
Yeah, you're just like, well, that's too much. I don't have that much time.
Yeah, and I think in your most recent episode on the Secret Service, you pointed out 6 anomalies in terms of the Secret Service, in terms of the motorcade procedure and how it related to past motorcades. And I know you have one more Secret Service episode left to go, but I think the question you're getting at here is complicity or negligence.
Yes, definitely, because they're definitely negligent. I mean, you can't, like, they weren't even trying. They didn't have any rooftop security because he forgot. Like, what are you talking about, man?
Well, I mean, to do that and going through the middle of Dallas is kind of unfeasible.
Security?
Yeah. I mean, going through like the main street of Dallas, there were so many tall buildings. It would have been unreasonable to think that they could have checked them all out, and B, posted somebody up in all of them or on top of all of them. I mean, that's just
especially when you consider it was like the 3rd or 4th city in Texas he visited.
Right.
So,
and you hadn't had a presidential assassination in at that point, 60 some years, or an attempt, or
Truman was the last attempt.
A success.
Anyway,
yeah.
That was 1910 or 1908. I don't remember. So what my respectful counter to that, Triple B, would be that the way that it was done in all the other cities, I hear what you're saying. You couldn't perfectly cover everything, every multi-story building, like the guy said in the book. You couldn't do that. I agree. But to make 0.0 effort at all, and to completely break protocol, and to have nothing, and to not even have any conversations about it, there's not. They could put one person in all of Dealey Plaza. They could put 2 there. They could go every quarter mile. They could do something.
Well, they had a presence on the street. It just was on the street. It wasn't on top of the buildings. They did post up Dallas cops and sheriffs all over the place.
Right.
It was probably their job to watch rooftops, and radio and anything suspicious.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
What gets me, Matt, is like no heads rolled. I mean, you just lost a president on your watch, and nobody gets fired because of it.
if
Like,
someone got fired, then that would give the impression that they did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That was literally a quote from the Warren Report.
right. But like after the assassination, you know, J. Edgar Hoover, I did a show about this because I found the document and I was just like, holy shit. So I found this document that basically went through all of Hoover's punishments for his FBI agents that screwed shit up.
Yeah, did a lot.
Pertains to the assassination. And he was, you know, demoting people, moving people around, you know, letting people go. I mean, it was just a list of, you know, from the top down, you know, from the headquarters to, you know, these local FBI offices. And it wasn't public or anything, but it was an internal kind of thing. You know, it wasn't made public. It wasn't published anywhere. I don't even think the Warren Commission knew about it. It was a document that came out much later, but it had all of his punishments, you know, listed in there for all. Just, I mean, there was probably 50 on there.
Yeah,
that dropped the ball, basically.
Well, can we, if you don't mind, I'd love to get into J. Edgar Hoover a little bit and the FBI, just because. So after I go Secret Service, I'm going into J. Edgar Hoover. And when I say FBI, I'm really just going to Hoover.
Isolate that real quick, Joe.
Yeah.
Matt's going into J. Edgar Hoover.
Jeez. Oh man. Okay. So anyway, I don't have a ton of material. I have like all the stuff around the Warren Commission on him. I have, you know, the stuff that, you know, kind of his connection before. I look at Marvin Giesling and how he kind of, you know, turned off the alarm bells. But here's my question. What do you have any opinions about what Hoover's mindset was when Kennedy was killed? Was he surprised by it? Did you think he had foreknowledge? Do you think when he saw it, he looked around and he realized that there was a conspiracy of some sort and he knew the CIA is doing some stuff because he's always talking about how they're dirty double dealing and all this stuff? Or do you think, I'm just trying to figure out, obviously he's complicit in the cover up, you know, to an extent. But you could argue that he's doing that because he's trying to avoid World War III, the whole thing that, you know, LBJ had set out. So just curious to hear y'all's opinion on what you think Hoover's headspace was like on November 22nd.
Well, I think you summed it up nicely because, you know, him and Lyndon Johnson were friends, neighbors. They knew each other well. And, you know, prior to Oswald's death, I think you have the investigation going one direction. You know, it was tying him to, you know, anti-Castro or pro-Castro stuff, Cuba, Russia. You know, they were really pushing all those angles. And then after he's killed, everything changes. And, you know, when Johnson wants to appoint this commission to look into it and the FBI is the investigative body to do so, that he kind of gives them a directive at that point. Like, we're not going to investigate this shit over here that leads to this. We're going to look at other things that lead a different way. You know, and I think it was because of what you said. You know, they were trying to avoid World War III. They didn't want to get into another war. Because, you know, if people thought that Russia or Cuba or Castro or was behind the assassination and controlling Oswald, then you got a big problem because you're going to have an outraged public demanding action at that point. You know, and the easy way out is to say, no, this guy was a lone nut. He was off his rocker. Don't look at all the shit that he was associating with. You know, he was just a very problem guy and this, that, and the other. And, you know, I think like, and the FBI was watching him, man. You know, as soon as he got back from Russia, John Fain was on him. He got handed off to Hosty, and he was handed off to New Orleans when he moved to New Orleans and then back to Dallas. I mean, they even sent Warren DeBreeze to Dallas as soon as Oswald was arrested. And the reason they did that is because DeBreeze knew him, knew his file, knew what had happened in New Orleans, and they knew what had happened in New Orleans relatively quickly after Oswald's arrest. That stuff was blasted out on the news everywhere. Yeah. And of course, the FBI had it early. And like I said, you had DeBreeze. They sent DeBreeze to Dallas for a reason. And I think the FBI was more worried about Marina Oswald than Lee, actually. And keeping that from her. But again, if you believe what Oswald is supposed to have said to several different people, was that the FBI was making it very hard for him to keep a decent job, a place to live, earn a decent wage, because the FBI was always come snooping around, asking questions, this and that.
I feel like the most likely path to Ruth Payne having federal involvement is being an FBI informant whose core target was Marina.
That's totally believable.
Makes sense to me. I mean, that's Larry Hancock's theory, and that's what I understand it to be. I mean, I don't want to put words in Mr. Hancock's mouth there, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't always have to be Oswald. Obviously, Marina. There's a CIA document that says here's 29 reasons why Marina is KGB. So they probably wanted to keep an eye on her. That makes a lot of sense. I guess when we look at I don't know, just all the little evidentiary things in the case. The trail of CE 399, for example. It's just there's a bunch of anomalies that just make you wonder if everything's on the up and up over at the FBI. That's kind of all I'm saying. But Hoover's ultimate motive, I'm led to believe. So there's a book I read. What's like the main, but it's called Act of Treason, and it's a book that focuses on Hoover. And the argument is, it's got pretty good research generally. It's really good stuff on RFK's kids coming to go see Hoover, and then he had to go to him, and Hoover hated the kids and he hated RFK, and RFK had to go to an emergency meeting at the White House, so he left his kids with Hoover as like toddlers. He just left one of them being RFK Jr. He just left them with Hoover while he had to jet to the White House. It's hilarious. It's amazing. I
gotta watch these Kennedy brats.
Yeah. RFK is just like, put that hamburger down. His voice is all messed up. He's like 4 years old.
And yeah, to answer your question, I think J. Edgar Hoover was probably surprised at the news. And I think he probably went into cover your ass mode pretty quickly in terms of like a lot of agencies did with their contact with Oswald. We know about him requesting an FBI agent after August 9th and DeBreeze and some of the allegations of him being seen with it was DeBreeze, right? In New Orleans.
Yes, Pena says he was an FBI informant for DeBreeze.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of common with a lot of the agencies, is that they all were using Oswald for their specific purpose, whether it was Jim Angleton counterintelligence with the file or this and that. And at some point, they all went, okay, we have to cover our ass now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And, that's my working theory for sure.
Well, on the linking Oswald to Cuba, there's the whole Alvarado thing about the guy that came and supposedly bribed Oswald with his cash at the Cuban embassy, and the CIA is really trying to run with that story.
Yeah, the redheaded guy or something.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the FBI is trying to hit the brakes on it. They pull all their experts all their Cuba experts off the case. They instruct them to not follow leads with conspiracy leads, and that kind of to me is consistent with, hey, the CIA is trying to do a false flag, and the FBI is trying to do what the president wants, which is to not have a nuclear war, right?
Yeah. No, I think to your point, there's a ton of different motivations by the different agencies, whether it's self-preservation or whatever. But that's what makes this case so hard to kind of deconstruct 61, almost 62 years later, is that all these agencies are kind of running cover for themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so, Matt, you mentioned something earlier, and I was going to get into this. Fred Litwin is a friend of our show, and I listened to the.
Or he was a friend of our show.
Yeah, I met him in Dallas this year, and he's a good guy. We'll get to that reference soon. And he came on a couple months ago, and I know you had your debate with him on the Sean Atwood show, which I thought was great, and you did a great job, because it's not easy to debate Fred. He knows what he's talking about.
He's a wordsmith.
Yeah, he's in particular an excellent. He knows a lot about New Orleans and the Garrison case in particular. I had him on my show to talk New Orleans.
Yeah,
and everybody was like, I thought you thought there was a conspiracy, Crumpton. Like, what?
Yeah,
you're agreeing with him on all these things, and I do agree with him that I don't think Perry, what's his name? What's Kevin? Yeah, I don't think Kevin Bacon killed the president. No, I don't think the Perry Russo story. It's like, well, what's the story? You overheard? You say you overheard Clay Shaw, Bertram, whatever, and David Ferrie and Oswald with a beard talk about killing the president in a crossfire. Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, to me, even if the story is true, that doesn't prove that any of that actually happened. I mean, now Clay Shaw, and David Ferrie certainly have ties, so that are worthy of exploring, and that I think we got to keep an eye on them. There's open people of interest, but the idea that Perry Russo witnessed some provable smoking gun, it's not as then there's the whole sodium pentothal thing, which makes it less fun. The thing that turned me on the whole, like, and look, I'm not hating Jim Garrison. I think he did more. I think he. I think that he brought a lot of good stuff to light. Okay, the stuff that bothered me the most about about it as an attorney, were the favors that he did, just the pure corruption in terms of Perry Russo's friends. Like, he helped while Perry Russo is a prime witness in his case, he's helping Russo's friend who had gotten kicked out of LSU. He calls the governor and gets his friend reinstated at LSU. It's a pretty big favor to do. Then he has another friend, Russo, and this is and it wouldn't bother me as much if it was after the trial, but this is before the trial, when he really needs to keep him on the hook, and then the other thing he does is he has a friend who's drafted. His draft number was up, and he's gonna have to go to Vietnam. But if you have criminal charges pending against you, you're not eligible to go to the draft. So he didn't have to go. So he got Garrison to cook up fake charges against his friend, and Garrison did it. And in fact, his friend was charged with a crime, and he didn't have to go to Vietnam. So I saw that and I was like, and I saw the sodium pentothal and I read all this stuff, but I still think, Clay Shaw's deep CIA, David Ferrie's super duper shady, Guy Banister all day long. So yeah, these characters and the sub point. So what I agree with Fred Litwin about is the specifics of the Garrison case and a lot of that stuff. What I disagree with him about is the significance and sort of the meaning of the evidence when it comes to Guy Banister, all those
interpretation of it. Almost.
Yeah, right. And then when we went on to Atwood talking about the case at large, that's when we kind of really got to display our differences in views.
No, and I watched both shows, and Fred has come on, and he is a good guy. And I'm going to play this very short clip from is going to be funny. From our interview with him a few months ago, I think it was right before Lance or Rob, and then I want to get your take on his take on David Ferrie. And this is kind of a running joke in our community, Rob.
Okay.
And we'll explain it in a second. So.
I have to say that, David Ferrie was a really good guy and incredibly misunderstood. He was the sort of person who, if you had a flat tire at a restaurant, he would go and change it for you. He was a really intelligent man who spoke multiple languages, played the piano, flew, very, very well educated. And he had nothing to do with any of it. I mean, absolutely nothing. He was actually a very, very good person.
Well, I don't know if I call him a good person, Fred. He did have some black marks against him there.
Well, I have to say on the homosexuality side that, the age of consent here in Canada is 16, and he had 16-year-olds, by the way, who were always coming back to him. Their parents might not have been happy, but when they ran away from home, where did they go to? They went to David Ferrie's house because he took them to church on Sundays. He taught them to play piano. He taught them to fly. He taught them all. They loved him. And I spoke to Albo Buff a couple of years ago, who went on the Texas trip and still loves David Ferrie. Still speaks very highly of him.
All right. So that's kind of been a running joke, and
that was like 5 minutes into the show, Matt, and I was like, "Oh shit, here we go. It's gonna be a long interview."
And then we asked him about the Eastern Airlines thing, and his kind of grooming techniques. But I want to preface it by I think both of us we like Fred. He's a funny guy. Yeah. He's a good guy.
He just dug himself a hole very early on in the show.
I don't. Like I said, man, I truly I want to be cool with everybody. I don't want there to be anybody in the JFK community that's like, screw Matt Crumpton, that guy's a jerk. You can be like, his ID's wrong about this because of this. And I know people are going to do whatever they do, but if people are hit me with vitriol, I'm just not going to interface with them. I'm just going to kind of move on,
Yeah, that's the best thing to do is just ignore them and move on.
But Fred has been respectful, and look, my audience does not love it when I have Fred on.
Neither does ours, sir.
But I like, especially for what I'm trying to do, where my whole premise is I'm trying to get the counterpoints. But I will say what I look,
and he does a great job at that. And I think his book,
for sure, and then he'll lay it out, and I'd be like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I still don't buy it. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, it's
So do you think David Ferrie was a good guy, Matt?
I think David Ferrie is a good guy. I think David Ferrie was an extreme anti-communist. I think David Ferrie took some, he certainly did some unethical, immoral things with kids. I'm not talking about homosexuality. I'm talking about taking advantage of somebody who's a child. Right. Okay, that's what I'm talking about.
Borderline grooming, right?
Yeah. So I don't think that's that's good that David Ferrie did that, but more to the point of the case, and also David Ferrie, he kind of seemed like he liked a good time. I will say this about Ferrie, so I'm not gonna say he's a good guy. Could you argue that he would have been fun to hang out with? Maybe, right? And the only reason I would say that is because he stole that plane and flew it from Columbus to Cleveland. And then he landed and pretended to be like an officer in the Air Force and made everyone salute him. I think Joe Pesci was great to play him for what the record says he was like. Although if you listen to recordings of David Ferrie, it doesn't sound like that.
Nothing like him. Right?
But
he wasn't intellectual.
Was right.
Yeah, he wasn't intellectual, and I think the word I would maybe put towards him instead of a good guy would be misunderstood.
Look, I don't know enough about his personal did he have like a sunny disposition, you know what I mean? But if we look at the documents and we look at the witness statements, David Ferrie's doing some he's involved in some shenanigans with the Cubans. His best friend's freaking what's his name? Arcacha, Sergio Arcacha Smith.
Yeah.
So, and Arcacha Smith is super dialed in with Banister, and so is Ferrie. He's dialed in with Banister. And Banister's working. He's paying all these people to go infiltrate groups. Is he just doing that for fun? He's either FBI or CIA. He's working for somebody, naval, and everybody that says naval intelligence. So I just thought, if you ever hear me say naval intelligence, that just means I think that you'll think I'm smart if I say it, but I'll have to dig more on naval intelligence.
Well, like naval intelligence has been around since the late 1800s.
Yeah.
The CIA has only been around officially since 1947. Before that it was the OSS, and
I think Jim Garrison's case died when David Ferrie died.
Exactly.
And it was severely damaged when Guy Banister died. I'm not saying Guy Banister was murdered, although a heart attack gun did exist.
Yeah, per the church committee. And I don't know if you saw our episode with Janet Banister.
No, tell me about it. I saw that she was doing something. I came across that in a Reddit forum that was hating on me.
Yeah, she started a podcast last summer. I forget what it's called offhand.
Skeletons in the Closet.
Yeah.
What's her take? What's the position of her podcast?
She's a low nut, but a good one.
Well, so far she's just being very cautious. Like the first season of the podcast was basically guys' beginnings with the FBI, when he started, and going back his major accomplishments in his life. She hasn't really gotten to New Orleans yet. That's season 2.
Okay.
And I met with her a couple weeks ago because she wanted to go over some things for season 2, and she wanted me to help her with some documents and stuff from Guy Banister and witness statements, and because there's a ton of them. When it comes to Banister, there's so much out there. Like everybody says, oh, he was like talking to Fred. He'll tell you, oh, Guy Banister was so poor he couldn't pay his $8 rent. And he got kicked out on the streets, blah, blah, blah. Yet I find his homicide report, right? And it tells of like Delphine Roberts, how she found Guy. She went to Guy Banister's house. He was separated from his wife, Mary, and he was living on his own in this apartment house. It was like, a big house, but it was separated into like 4 different apartments. And he was on the bottom left in like apartment B or something. And Delphine goes over there and looks in the window because they haven't been able to reach him. And she sees him laying on the couch, but he won't answer the door. So she calls his friend Bill Nitschke, former FBI buddy. And Bill comes over, and they break into his apartment and find him dead, laying there. And the police report lays it all out. I mean, they found like the equivalent of, what was it, Joe? Like $4,000 in his pocket in today's money, right? Yeah. And that's just in his pocket, not in his wallet, not stuffed in a drawer somewhere, not in his car, not in his bank account. But this guy had money to pay his rent, right? If he wanted to, right? What's $8 when you're walking around with, hundreds and hundreds of dollars, which in today's money, it translates to thousands and thousands of dollars.
Right.
Yeah. So something about that is a little shady, right? And she had never seen these documents before, so I sent them all over to her. And there's interviews with like Joseph Oster, Joe Newborough, the Fat Man, who says some different things, and of course you have all these other people who supposedly were working for Banister, if you will. So the guy had money. I mean, he's got to be paying these people. Are not just doing all this shit for free. He's paying them something.
Yeah. So, where's he getting that money from?
Right. So is this stuff above board? I don't know. It's odd to us. When it comes to Banister, what his motives were, what he could have been behind. Like when we got into the whole Martin thing, and that kid was sent from General Walker to New Orleans, and then all of a sudden we have Oswald on video doing this pro Castro shit, and getting arrested for it, and it's all fishy,
What'd she say about that?
Well, I told her the theory. We kind of reiterated it to her. I don't think we talked about it on the air with her, but
I don't think so. Yeah.
I told her a couple of weeks ago, the thought process. I kind of laid it all out for her, and I was like, all right, this is going to sound crazy, but just hear me out, and I kind of laid it all out, and she was like, well, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But
and I think
again,
Rob,
it's speculation. It's just a thought. It's just a theory. There's absolutely no corroboration behind it. But when you put all of these little puzzle pieces together, it kind of points in a certain direction.
Yeah, but it's not just well, I mean, like, to me, it's just a theory. It's just a theory to say that Bill Greer shot JFK in the head based on the film. It's just a theory to say George Hickey did based on 3 arguments. This has a lot more touch points. You know what I mean? So,
well, the one thing we didn't tell you when we were on your show when it comes to this theory is, okay, the very last thing that you see on the John T. Martin film before it cuts to Canal Street is the Lafayette Square, the statue in Lafayette Square.
right.
And the story goes that John T. Martin tells is that he heard commotion. So he ran over there with his camera to film it. We pulled up a map of New Orleans and we Google mapped, right? So we're on the street view. We're at Lafayette Square. So
I got it, Rob. I'm pulling it up.
We start walking towards, walking down the street towards Canal Street. And it is freaking, what would you say, Joe? 8 blocks away?
Well, let's count. I'm pulling this up from our John T. presentation.
Okay.
From his last film thing.
And interestingly enough, Matt, he goes right by Oris Pena's bar, the Havana bar. He goes past Casa Roca, which is Brinier's store. Okay. And then he makes a right there and goes past the trademark. And then the street fracas is right there.
Yeah.
Really? Copy's right there too. That looks like a fun. We should have a conference in New Orleans and do a walking tour there.
How many blocks is that, Joe? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I mean, this is so far. You're not going to hear this from 14 blocks away. Like, we walked it on Google Street View.
Hang on.
He
says that the fracas that he heard was from Jackson Square.
Yeah, he said he heard a commotion and went to film it.
Yeah,
and then that the same thing that actually is on the film is the commotion that he heard.
Yeah.
Well, that's obviously nonsense. You've proven.
Like, it cuts from Jackson Square to the street fracas.
Yeah,
I think you've established that that's crazy. So he's lying then, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So does it make sense he sent specifically to that spot on Canal Street?
Because he was sent there to go film Oswald in this fight, yeah?
Right.
We think so. We think that's plausible. We think the take one, when he wrote that letter to V.T. Lee, which I believe was on August 1st, 1963, Rob, and told about a story to the Fair Play for Cuba Committee that he got beat up by a bunch of Cubanos or whatever the name he had for it. And then it happened a week later. And there's no way that from his last film on his video that he would have heard the street fracas unless it was, again, a massive coincidence in a case full of coincidences that he, heard this from a dozen blocks away and happened to get it on film. So.
And Jackson Square is the same thing as Lafayette Square. That's just the prior name to it.
No, I got it mixed up. Lafayette Square is right across from Banister's office. That's my fault. I get them mixed up all the time. Jackson and Lafayette Square.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he was at Jackson Square.
Well, I mean, even so, okay, so we're talking 1, 2. Oh, he was at Jackson Square or Lafayette?
His last part of the film before the fracas was in Jackson Square. It was the horse.
So yeah, obviously there's no way he could have heard that.
No way
from there. It's, obviously. So
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. I mean, and so it'll be nice to see what Janet Banister ends up doing with her podcast. So basically, she has not reached a point where she has to make a decision on the show yet.
No, and
she's
she's
approaching.
very objective. To her credit, I think she said in one of the episodes that she's, trying to bridge the gap between Guy Banister that she knew with her family, right?
Did she know him?
Yeah, it was her great uncle. Yeah,
But she actually met him.
She never met him. But her
she
dad is still alive, right?
Her brother or his brother.
No, her dad.
Oh, his nephew.
Yes,
he's the great nephew, right?
Yeah,
yeah, and she was trying to bridge the gap of what people assume about Guy Banister and what her family thinks, and how it's probably somewhere in the middle, like it falls, right?
Yeah, of course the family doesn't want to believe in a conspiracy or that he was into any of this stuff. Of course, you don't.
Right.
You don't want that family legacy. But I told her, I was like, you got to be honest with yourself, no matter where you come down with this.
Also, it's, I think, pretty indisputed that Banister hated Kennedy. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So there's that. All right.
Yeah.
And then separately, if he's going to, let's say he was doing what I think he was doing, which is continuing what he had done his entire career with the FBI, which is getting people to infiltrate leftist groups. And I think that's all it was. Or tracking them. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. And I think from the perspective of someone that's in his family, if you don't want to feel bad about your family, it's easy. You just go, he was doing his job and it was compartmentalized and he didn't know that, because I think it probably is true. I don't think there's no reason Banister would need to know about the whole plot. He would just need to know that Oswald's,
right.
we need this guy. Now, maybe he did know. I'm not saying he didn't know for sure, but it's quite possible.
There's no need. There's no operational need for him to know.
Right. So
yeah, I mean, she thinks that, towards the end of his life, that he may have suffered a stroke. He was, raging alcoholic and wasn't making good decisions, which could possibly be true. I mean, it's quite evident that what happened with the New Orleans PD when he was, sent there to clean him up, when he was hired, to clean up the
corruption,
to head the crime commission. Yeah. He reprimanded like 92 officers in the NOPD, and he had all kinds of people pissed off at him.
Right.
So some of these incidents could have been blown out of proportion, where he's he pulled a gun on me and told me he was going to kill him, and
right.
So who knows what the truth of all that was.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was in his element when he was working for himself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's not forget the 544 Camp Street. And then the thing that for me just put me over the top on that was Jesse Core, who was like Clay Shaw's right-hand man, and he sent a copy of the pamphlet and circled the Fair Play for Cuba stamp, and he wrote a note on the front page that said "Note inside back cover," and he sent it to the head of the New Orleans FBI. So why the hell is he doing that if there's not something to pay attention to? He was like, dude, your boy's using the 544 Camp Street, And I said that to Fred, and he goes, well, that's not how I see it. So again, we have an influence.
That was the headquarters of the CRC, Sergio Arcacha Smith's group.
Right.
Carlos Quiroga is associated with him and Bernier and his group. You have Carlos Quiroga trying to infiltrate Oswald's Fair Play for Cuba committee unofficially, if you will, for whatever purpose. And then
remember, like the HSCA used William Gaudet. They used his testimony for Mexico City, and then they, in the same interview that they got his testimony from Mexico City, he told them that he witnessed Banister talking to Oswald in front of the Trade Mart, and it looked like they were in serious conversation, and Banister wanted Oswald to do something for him.
Yeah.
But nobody mentioned that. They
Right.
didn't mention that in their section on New Orleans. So yeah, I'm completely sold on Banister being working for some sort of governmental entity, doing what he did his entire career. And it's, I don't think he's necessarily, you can say that he's a plotter of the assassination itself, just because he was working to sheep-dep Oswald, which could have been done for a number of purposes.
Exactly. And
he's only associated because of the people that were around his office at the time. When you talk about Ferrie, Jack Martin, because somebody dropped a dime very quickly in New Orleans implicating David Ferrie.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Jack Martin. I mean,
Yeah.
it was, but somebody tipped off the FBI to Jack Martin before. Like, Jack Martin didn't go to them. They went to him because somebody else tipped him off that Martin was saying all this shit. So it's a very crazy sequence of events, and I think, like you said earlier, had Banister not died, had David Ferrie not died, that the Clay Shaw, or I'm sorry, the Jim Garrison investigation would have came out a lot differently,
Yes.
Yeah, for
Definitely.
sure. And so my last question here, Matt, is an easy one, but a tough one. And I think you covered this in most of your season 2. Oswald, witting or unwitting?
Overall, or do you mean just the Soviet Union?
Let's just say Soviet Union for now.
Okay, so what I would say, that my current working theory of the case that I humbly submit is that Oswald started working for the CIA when he was in the Marines, probably in Atsugi. You got a couple of people that he was in the Marines with who say this. David Bucknell is one of them. Now, yes, it is in Hustler magazine, but it's whatever. They're on the record saying it, okay? And this person's one who was there to know. I think that all the Popov's mole stuff, I know that everyone's not fully on board with that, but if you've got the whole point of that, let's put was Oswald used for bait to do a Soviet mole hunt? Let's put that on the side for a second.
Okay.
The point is, the routing of his files establishes conclusively, and I've never heard a counterpoint from this, okay, and I should have brought it up on Atwood, but the routing of his files should have gone to the Soviet Union or the Soviet Russia division if he was
being in the Office of Security,
right? If he was being watched as a potential threat, but instead it went to the Office of Security, that spies on spies, and that doesn't, again, like they would do. Why would they do that? Well, that would, and what do they asked Jane Roman, I think, what that meant. Morley and Newman, and Jane Roman was
operational interest in Oswald.
Boom, you got it. That's it. So, and then to have Pete Bagley, who's the head of the main counterintelligence agent of the CIA, going against the KGB, for him to basically say no, Oswald was witting, and he was a defector specifically as bait on this U2 program. I mean, I could see that. I also, I was listening to Larry Hancock on some show today. Maybe he was on, I don't remember what show it was, but and he doesn't think he thinks they used Oswald, but that he wasn't witting. So he's open to the idea that Oswald was bait for something, but maybe he didn't even know, and whatever. So because here's the challenge of, was he witting or not witting? What's inside this guy's head? Like, is he really a Marxist? Now it's easy to go, obviously it's all bullshit, man. What are you talking about? He's not a Marxist. That's an act. But when does he start writing to the National Socialist Party or whatever, or the
teenager?
Yeah, when he's a teenager. So I would say, and then he's talking about it when he's in the military, but he only starts talking about it in the military when he gets back from Japan. He doesn't say anything about any of this stuff in Japan, and nobody says he ever talks about any Marxism, anything the whole time. So to me, it's consistent with. I think he was probably interested in it. I think he did like lean that way, and then I think that that he also at the end of the day was a Marine first and foremost, and I think he, you know, I don't know, but I tend to lean.
It's a hard question. I know.
I tend to lean that he's
on the
waiting on the
spot.
Soviet Union as a false defector. I mean, I'm on the record for that. And I'm going to go deeper on that whole Papa's Mole thing. And then I think that for New Orleans and everywhere else, I think he's involved in something. There's some other plot going on. Hancock today, he laid out this whole thing of Oswald, like the Redbird Airport thing, the Wayne January, like that was real, and Oswald was getting ready to fly to Cuba, and that's why he's acting all weird on the night before with Marina. He's getting ready to fly to Cuba, and he's gonna kind of like take the next step in this his mission that he thinks he has, and that he was told to meet someone at the Texas Theater. So I mean, that I could see that being the case too. So yeah, I mean, I generally would say I lean towards Oswald. Definitely is not just an innocent bystander. I'm certain about that. He's privy to some other thing, or he's been told some other thing, and he thinks he's doing some spy type stuff.
Spy games in his head. Yes,
and I think he liked that, and he wasn't a total idiot, but he was probably maybe a little gullible, and he was being used by the agency.
Yeah,
I agree 100%. And
he was reading these James Bond novels.
Yeah,
too,
Yeah, Ian Fleming. Yeah, and I go back and forth on this all the time, and I think he was unwitting in most situations, but when he knew that he had to be witting, in his example, to get back from the Soviet Union, and he did what he had to do, and I think he wrote that this is the last time I'm ever going to work for anyone or anyone's interest. It's such a complicated question, and you gave a really good answer. And I think Larry and David Boylan have done an amazing job, and I know you've interviewed them, and we've had them on twice. The Oswald Puzzle, an amazing book. I think mostly unwitting, and of course his file being used by the Office of Security in Angleton. They might have had their own intentions for that. It's one of those things that that just will blow the mind and take you down a million different rabbit holes. But
yeah,
I think he was witting in some aspects when he had to be.
Hey, so here's a good counterpoint that NK brought up to the point about Oswald being writing to the Socialist Party when he was young. Well, he was also in the Civil Air Patrol before that, and he signed up for that. So how left wing can you be to be in? And then he signed up for the Marines. So I think he's a complex dude, and I think several things can be true at the same time. But it's arguable whether he was witting or not in the Soviet Union. I think when he got back, he did not think he was involved in a plot to kill the president. I don't think. But I think that he was involved in something. Some people think that there was here's a theory that I keep hearing people say, that smart people that have studied this, that there was basically a false flag that was planned to fire a shot at the president, like a security test. And
blame it on Hidel.
Yeah, and then blame it on Cuba. And then nefarious elements took advantage of that and did an actual plot. And I hate to bring it up, but that's 9/11. That's the official story, is that we had war games on these four planes with a planned scenario of a hijacking at the moment that it happened. So the argument is that it was a similar thing like that, like someone took advantage of an existing whatever.
Right, we got Matt is Lee was witting and Harvey unwitting.
I thought you were gonna write Matt as a 9/11 truther.
No.
Hey, you're in a safe space there.
No, good.
We usually go over that stuff on members only.
And I got one last thing for you, Matt. It's a fun document that I came across. It's actually a preview for an episode we're going to do here in a couple weeks. And it's from 1953. And it's a CIA document for the Inspector General at the time. Subject, use of LSD. Okay. Now,
go on.
Pursuant to your request, Dr. Willis Gibbons, chief of TSS, was contacted on the evening of 30 November 1953 concerning points hereinafter noted. Dr. Gibbons has impounded all SD material in CIA headquarters in a safe adjacent to his desk. No one else has the combination to this safe. The material was so impounded on 20 November 1953. Dr. Gibbons stated that he is stopping all and any LSD tests which may have been instituted or completed under CIA auspices. A cable will be sent to the field on 1 December 1953 to this effect. Only 2 field stations, Matt, Manila, which is the Philippines, and Atsugi, which is Japan, have LSD material. There is none in Germany, although Mr. William Harvey recently expressed interest in obtaining some.
I bet.
A cable to the field on 1 December 53 will instruct the field as to non-use and request to use as to how much is on hand and who has custody and access to this material. CIA has furnished a limited quantity of LSD to Mr. George White, chief of the New York District Narcotics Division, Treasury Department. Dr. Gibbons does not know the exact amount Mr. White has, and White is fully cleared to use accordingly, according to Dr. Gibbons. So I find it odd that the only 2 field stations that the CIA has that have LSD for use is Manila and Atsugi, 2 places that we know Oswald was.
Right.
Put this at the end of 53, and he joined in 57, 3 years prior to Oswald joining the Marines and being sent over there.
So we don't know for sure that it continued, but we don't. Is there anything that says that it ended? Is that what that document says?
MK Ultra hadn't even started yet. This is probably like artichoke time. You know what I'm saying?
They're just saying this is where the vials are. I love that they said the one guy didn't know how much he had. There's probably a memo back from him, and it's like, don't worry about it. We're good.
Yeah. And then what's his face goes flying out of a 20-story window in New York.
Frank Olson.
Yes.
I write songs about this kind of stuff on the side. I've got this great song called Make Me Forget, which is the concept is like, you like this girl so much that she makes you forget about all the crimes the government did. And it starts with throw in Frank Olson out of windows, the first lyric. Yeah.
Nice.
Good.
Nice. I love it. Well, Matt, dude, I hope you had a blast. We had a blast having you on the show.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Good times.
Back and do it again whenever you want.
Yeah.
I think I'll know more stuff at the end of season 3, or I'll be more confused. Either way, I'd love to come back on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we would love it for sure. And one thing I wanted to ask before you go, so you're exploring the different factions. How are you going to explore different intermingling of the factions? Were the Cuban exiles with the CIA and JM-Wave, or and the mafia? How are you going to explore possible collaborations between the factions you are exploring in season 3?
That's a really great question. How I'm thinking about it right now is just covering the entity itself. So like Secret Service, I'm just covering Secret Service right now. There's not a whole lot of interplay with them and other things, but Cuban exiles, CIA, FBI, mafia, we're everywhere. So I think what I'm going to do is cover the main topic, and then when I get to the next topic, I'll cover that, and then I'll cover the links in the context of one or the other. I mean, you know what I mean? And then, but the bottom line is, what I expect to happen, I'll tell you my long-term plan here. What I expect to happen is I'm going to have a lot of open questions. I think I'm going to be able to rule a lot of things out, right? And then there's going to be stuff that's just cloudy and inconclusive. And I hope to have a list of questions that I don't know the answer to that really like are the main things I need to determine. And then season 4 is going to be discussions and debates. And I'm just going to try to interview the smartest people and answer these specific questions, and then alternate with debating people on the other side. That's my plan for season 4. And then I'm going to compile it all in a book. That's my plan. And then I'm done. And then I'm out.
Well, you're definitely one of the good guys in podcasting, and I know
and not the David Ferrie way.
Yes, and not the David Ferrie way. And we were definitely we were happy to come on your podcast, and we're definitely thrilled that you came on ours. And I, to your point, I think the young, I don't want to say new era of podcasters, the younger people should definitely stick together and collab and work together, because that's how we're going to get anything done. And it was a pleasure to meet you in Dallas. I know when you were flying out, funny story to end it off, you brought us, we were at the bar or eating lunch, and you brought us a bottle of Jack Daniels that unopened. And I think 3 people in the chat can corroborate this, and that would be Paula, Scott Edwards, and Trey. And I don't know who the bottle ended up with, but you're like, I can't take this on my flight. Here's a bottle of Jack Daniels for everyone. And I was like, this dude is just fucking chill.
Well, what's funny is it was opened. I feel, was it totally closed, like sealed off? I thought it was.
Maybe one of the 3 people that might have got.
If I thought I could get it through security, perhaps I wouldn't have been so kind. Is my theory on the case? Yeah.
Well, the plane obliterated.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, that's why I gave it up, because I was flying out in a couple hours, or else I would have definitely taken it. Like, screw you guys, listeners. I'm just kidding. But yeah, man, pleasure to have you on, and definitely hope we could chat again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, guys.
For all things Matt Crumpton, check out the links in the description. You can find his YouTube channel and his website, where you can buy his book, buy his merch, and listen to his show. So check it out.
All right.
One of the good guys.
Thanks, guys.
That's right. Now, but before we go, we got to bring in
Dino
Dean Andrews.
Do you know how we end the show, Matt?
Yeah. I think you've got a pretty good Dean Andrews quote. Yeah, is that what's going on?
Yeah, we dance out to him, and
I have a YouTube clip of Dean Andrews dancing with a what do they call it? It's not an umbrella. It starts with a P. It's a fancy word for an umbrella, like the French word.
Oh, I don't know.
Shit, parasol. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
He's dancing with a parasol, and you know, he's got the music playing behind him. He's got his Hawaiian shirt on, unbuttoned, shades on, dancing around. And he always dances us out of here. So without further ado, thank you again, Matt, for hanging with us here.
With my dog, Ruby.
Yeah, you got to get Ruby, Joe. Go get the damn dog.
I do have a dog named Ruby, Matt.
It's Ruby. Good job.
Ruby. Come here.
That's the wrong song.
I like that one.
Also, be on the lookout for a new episode of the Dallas Action that dropped today. Go check it out. Homie, the JFK documents, missing leads, and early suspects in the death of Johnny Roselli, folks. And if I Wall Street Window, another fine podcast brought to you by Drop D Podcast Productions, and my friend Doug Campbell. Check it out.
The greatest crimes are committed in the name of justice. The quotation is Jim Garrison's. It could be used for him or against him in this strange case.
Thanks, Ruby. Thank you, folks, for hanging out with us. Hope you enjoyed the show. See you.
Thank you, Matt.
Next Wednesday. People, we love you.